Good evening and welcome to the July 11th, 2022 meeting of the Rockingham County Planning Board, which I now call to order. Chair recognizes Mr. James Fink for our invocation.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us here tonight, and we pray that you'll watch over this board as we conduct the affairs of the county in representation of our citizens. We pray that you give us the strength to make partial decisions that would have a positive impact on the county and the citizens that have requests. Lord, we also ask that you watch over our law enforcement, our fire, our EMS, and our military as they are the ones that protect us. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Let the record show that a quorum is present for the planning board to conduct business. Next item on the agenda is adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we adopt the agenda as written.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to adopt the agenda. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, like sign. There's no opposition, so the agenda is adopted. The next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes, and we're going to do these in three separate motions. The first being the minutes for the April 11th meeting.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the April 11th minutes as written.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the April 11th meeting minutes. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, like sign. There's no opposition, so the minutes for April 11th are approved. The next minutes are the May 9th minutes.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the May 9th, 2022 meeting minutes.
I second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the May 9th meeting minutes. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. Those opposed, like sign. Again, no opposition, so the minutes for May 9th are approved. And the last set of minutes are for the June 9th meeting. I'm sorry, June 13th meeting.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion we approve the minutes on June 13th, 2022.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the minutes for June 13th. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, like sign. Again, no opposition, so the minutes are approved. The following are the procedure that the board will use for the case presentations. Each case on the agenda requesting a zoning map change will be presented to the planning board by a member of the planning staff. Following the staff presentation, the case applicant will be given the opportunity to brief the board regarding the case. Following the applicant's presentation, the planning board will provide a public comment period. All persons who would like to speak during the public comment period regarding any rezoning case being heard by the planning board must sign the case file roster located at the entrance of these chambers prior to the beginning of the meeting. The public comment period is not a forum for dialogue or debate with the planning board. The express purpose of the public comment period is for the planning board to receive additional facts, comments, and opinions regarding a request to change the zoning map. The chairperson will open the public comment period. Speakers will be called in the order in which they signed up. The chairperson reserves the right to set time limits for each speaker. When recognized, each person signed up to speak will do so in a civil manner from the podium. Before beginning to speak, the chairperson will ask that you provide your name and address for the record. Unless otherwise directed, all testimony, evidence, or comments shall be directed to the planning board, not to staff or the audience. If you agree with an argument for or against a request to change the zoning map already presented by another speaker, please practice the courtesy of indicating as much when you are called to speak. Comments or outbursts from the audience are not permitted. After all speakers have been heard, the chairperson will close the public comment period. The applicant will then be given the opportunity for rebuttal. This will be followed by board discussion, motions, and voting. The first matter before the rezone is rezoning request 2022-15 for Tiger Tech Industrial. At this time, we'll ask staff to present the particulars of this case.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I present, I do believe there are some people who may have signed up on the incorrect sign-in sheet, which happens all the time. It's okay. I just want to make sure the right people get on the right sheet. Ernest Lynn, is that you, sir? Okay. I'm just marking these so I can give them to the chairperson so we can get the right person. You're concerned about the Terramore, correct?
I'm concerned about the rezoning of the 3756.
Okay, very good. Terry Clark? Same. Jennifer Carter? Same. Shannon Franklin? Same? Okay. And Scott Strader, given your address, I think it's about this one, the first one. Okay.
Okay. Okay, hold on one second now. Okay.
Can everyone see that okay? Yes. On the big screen? All right. Thanks for coming out tonight, everyone, and thank you to the planning board for hearing our cases this evening. We have two, both of which are rezoning requests, legislative matters, which the chairperson just pointed out. The first is case 2022-15. This is a request for a zoning map amendment, which reads a little confusing, from heavy industrial conditional district to heavy industrial conditional district, but it's with amended allowed uses. Noted tax pin, the address is at 2741 NC Highway 135. If you're familiar with the area, this is also at the corner of Saunders Road, which is just a small road that curves up to the north. It's the Mayo Township. It is a conditional zoning. This is a vicinity map that shows it's a little closer to Eden, but pretty much between Stoneville and Eden on Highway 135. This is a zoning map of the area that shows that we've got a pretty decent mix of uses in the area. You do have a lot of residential agricultural, which is almost always the case in just about any area of the county. But there are two parcels owned by the Tiger Tech company, the one immediately behind it, that little sliver behind the yellow shaded area, and then the yellow shaded area. We have some light industrial in the area, some heavy industrial, also neighborhood commercial, and some residential protected. So a mix of uses. This area is in the protected area of the Dan River Eden watershed near Buffalo Creek and the Dan River, but no other significant environmental features. And the land use plan for this area, the current land use plan places it in the O2 land class, just on the edge of the G1 land class of a nearby commercial node to the northeast. I wanted to glance at my staff report really quickly to see if there was something I wanted to point out. I did want to point out, before we talk about the summary essentially, that The history of this case with the documents that you have in your package is that industrial rezoning was permitted for Tiger Tech in 2007. And at the time, it was granted one conditional use, and that was industrial equipment service. I'm not even sure exactly what that means, except maybe industrial equipment coming in to be cleaned, serviced, repaired, and sent out. So I'm not exactly sure exactly all the things that Tiger Tech does, but we do have a representative here to speak for the evening. They have come to us now 15 years later, and naturally within the industrial zoning class, would like to expand their uses and conform to what is a more current understanding of conditional zoning within certain districts. The older practice of rezoning or zoning a parcel and allowing only one specific use it's just not good planning, because it means, what if the property changes hands in the future and someone else who wants to come in to engage in industrial activities, then they only have the one use. It basically cuts out the viability of the property without rezoning in any case when it comes down to it. So the list of permitted uses in the industrial district were reviewed. The applicant went through, marked out those that are not options for the future, left in those that are options for the future, exclusionary conditional zoning, which we often do. And so that's how this request came about. There have been some conceptual ideas that have been discussed about potential uses, but nothing is written in stone at this point. However, this is a conditional zoning, therefore you guys can ask the questions you might like of the representatives that are here this evening. Back to the land use plan summary. As you saw, the zoning matrix in the area supports this, essentially. The parcel is located in the current land use plan in the O2 rural land class, which is generally characterized by low-density rural residential development. The character of the county has changed over time. In the former land use plan, it was characterized as urban transition. Do you remember the old land use plan? Mm-hmm. So under that is probably how it gained the rezoning that it did at the time. So now we have sort of a legacy zoning situation, a use that has been in place for a long time. The O2 land use policy does encourage the reuse of existing commercial structures that have been underused or vacant when applicable. That isn't necessarily a direct correlation with this one, but it does support it to some degree. Based on economic development goals in the land use plan and based on prior zoning history in the areas that we've looked at before, such as last month's review of the Transcontinental Pipeline site, having been there for a very long time, which is now also in the O2 land use class, there is enough support for this for us as a staff to be able to recommend approval. With that, I'll end and answer any questions.
So what we're being asked to do is to correct the zoning classification as it's become upgraded in the last 15 years.
Essentially, and the business operation is now ready to explore expanded uses.
Okay.
Yep.
That were not originally covered in 15 years ago in the...
Clearly, yes. If you'll note in your packet, I included the decision letter that we mail out to any zoning decision that's made to any applicant. And the zoning district was granted HICD, and it was HICD for industrial equipment service, and that was it, which is what we understand today is just not a smart way to zone overall,
All right.
given different circumstances.
Okay, is there any questions for staff?
I have one.
Go ahead.
Why was it only given one use in 2008?
If I had a crystal ball. No, I'm just kidding. There, in this county and in other places too in the past, the understandings of conditional zoning have changed a lot over time, especially in rural areas. This county in particular had a history of allowing rezonings with a single use. Say, okay, you can do this and you can have this district, but just for this use. which may have fit the texture of the neighborhood and the zoning needs at the time, but now no longer fit the picture and are now no longer really standard zoning practice because of things like the items that I mentioned. There was a recent issue that I looked at that may have eventually come before you guys, but it turned out that it didn't. A parcel, this is really old, was on Highway 65, had been zoned community shopping for a cabinet shop or something like that. But that's all they could have in the entire district. And so multiple real estate agents were calling me saying, what's allowed in this district? Because it's community shopping. Aren't these lists in the neighborhood commercial district about the same? I said, they are, but anyone who wants to do anything besides cabinet work on this is going to have to do a rezoning. So this sort of falls into that category where, yes, in this case, these people are asking for these expanded uses, but this is not something that we would do today. If someone came to us today, with rare exception, and said we would like to rezone to neighborhood commercial for this use and it's going to be conditional, we would pick a set of uses, maybe a narrower set of uses than this, or it would be a straight rezoning, but we wouldn't say that we would not recommend, yes, rezone, but only for this single use because it puts too tight of a restriction on the property. And in some legal eyes, and I might even ask John to chime in on this, could zone out too many uses as to be kind of borderline. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. You guys know I'm mouthy and chatty. Sorry. I always want more details than fewer. I'm glad to answer any more questions.
I have a question. So if we, in looking at the request, this facility is pretty unique.
It is. You're right.
And I'm wondering if, I've looked at the things that aren't crossed out,
Sure.
and I'm wondering, other than like resale, I don't know. I think there needs to be more crossing out of stuff.
And that very well could be. And as a conditional zoning, that is up for this board. And if so, the commissioners to examine and ask about and to see what the applicant might be willing to take a look at. And that's perfectly reasonable.
Or like, instead of crossing out the uses, maybe expanding the uses to more conform, that will still conform to what the business is now.
Sure.
But also allow them to do more than just one thing there.
Exactly.
So maybe that's the better way to approach this. Again, it's a pretty unique piece of property.
It is.
But if you allow more than just, what is it? What was?
The industrial equipment service.
Industrial service. That's pretty broad to me, but.
Yeah, it is. It is.
But it seems like to me that there are some things here that we could expand it.
Yeah.
And still not, if that thing wants to turn hands, maybe it's time to, I'm not really comfortable with giving them very broad
That's reasonable.
uses, but to give them some more leeway.
Sure, and that's reasonable. I've had that discussion with other members and other staff that perhaps that's something to look at. This is the initial application that always comes in like this. Sometimes it's perfectly reasonable. Sometimes it needs amending, and that's the nature of a conditional rezoning.
Yeah.
There's some back and forth with it. And I feel like, given my discussions, and Marzi was the original person who talked about this with, but it came to me from him, about the plans for expanded uses. I don't believe that the vast majority of these are in the plans. So, yes, I think that's reasonable to bring up. Again, I apologize. I wanted to make sure everybody knew that Marzi can't be here tonight because he's got a health issue and is at home. So, yeah, it's reasonable to speak with the applicant. The primary applicant, in a situation like this, when it's an industrial rezoning, it can be any multiple number of applicants who have any number of titles. Mr. Banks, oh my God, I forgot his last name. Banks is his first name. We're on a first name basis. We've talked quite a bit. Is on vacation, but he does have a representative here who I spoke with earlier who can answer some questions. And it is certainly worth looking at taking out some more of these uses. And we can, this evening, look at this list of uses. And if there are ones that you have star marks beside of that you're, concerned about, we can discuss them for sure. And I'll be glad to respond and answer any questions about some of those uses.
I'd ask Julie that you keep in mind that when we've done these lists in the past, we have used rather broad discretion in uses and not be overly restrictive in what can and can't be put in there, as long as it's not what are considered high-impact uses, and you'll notice that most of those are gone. In fact, they're just about all gone, like asphalt plant, for example.
So the things that are sort of sticking out to me, if that site remained sort of an industrial site, but it's not something where you put retail stores, that kind of thing.
Right.
I'm not real sure that's like a grocery store or a retail store would be fitting with.
I see what you mean. I see exactly what you mean. And my response would be to that, and that is a very reasonable concern, but my sort of planner response to that would be thinking of the future. When you think about future plans for uses or other potential owners, this keeps it open for those, but at the same time, if it's not necessarily the best fit, the planning board can certainly consider that and make that judgment.
If we're overly restrictive and the business and property are sold, we may be back in the same position 2 or 3 years from now with an applicant seeking to expand again on the uses.
Well, in that case, then the ones that are crossed out would seem like perfectly good places or perfectly good uses for that facility as well. Except
That would require another rezoning request if we did pass it as such with these crossed out or additionals crossed out. Yeah.
Adult uses, we don't do those. We're not going to do those in the county anyway. But the agricultural, unregulated agricultural, heck, it's agriculture. There's agriculture all around it. It just seems like to me, we ought to do one or the other. You know what I mean? And I'm not opposed to even, opening it up further.
Yeah. If you want to discuss this and see what you guys think, the applicant is here. The applicant's representative is here to speak with him, and then I will have a seat, I'll be glad to respond to any questions that you guys have. I believe we have 1 or 2 speakers signed up in addition to, I believe the applicant does need to sign in. I don't think he did yet.
So do we have this industrial, and I'm looking down the list here.
The heavy industrial, yeah.
Do we have any explosive manufacturing?
I don't believe we do.
Would we need some? And I'm looking, I'm looking.
You want to blow up?
Well.
Well, let me give you an example, okay? This enlightened me a bit. We have a robust zoning ordinance in this county compared to many counties. One of our neighbors nearby, Alamance County, does not have countywide zoning. And very recently, a quarrying and explosives operation applied for permits. And they had some guidelines for high-impact uses, but no zoning rules.
Yeah. Okay.
So they ended up in a very unique situation, which with a lot of reasonable public concern, So, yeah, it would be kind of weird for an explosive manufacturer to kind of want to relocate to Rockingham County, but it's not out of the question. It can happen. Or a significant mining operation or something like that if the right resources were found in the right place. So, yeah, I mean, those things aren't infeasible. The same thing happened in Caswell County where they had zero zoning about 3 years ago, and a mining company applied for the permits necessary to set up a mining operation, and there were no zoning rules, no high impact use rules, no nothing. And there was a lot of back and forth, but the mining operation got permitted. There is now some zoning in Caswell County because of that in certain areas, but this kind of thing comes up. So I'm confident and feel confident, and am glad we have the robustness that we do in our zoning ordinance. Sure, certainly always worth improving, all the time as we move along, but yeah.
So in the list here, I see only 8 that probably wouldn't fit here, and that's the adult uses, the animal facilities, although you could probably argue that one.
Well, why don't you hold off on those till we get the applicant on future land? It'll go
Let's say mark
faster.
those. Cindy, if you have some of those same concerns, mark the ones that you're concerned about. We'll bring up the
My
applicant.
concerns are the opposite.
Y'all gonna talk about that?
Any other questions for staff? Thank you, Lynn.
I'm gonna leave the
Yeah, leave that one up.
the zoning map.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Is a representative from Tiger Tech here tonight? Would you please come forward, sir?
Did you have a chance to sign in?
I did not.
Let me get the
I got one.
You could just ask them if you're willing to consider
Yeah.
dropping those off the list.
And that just opens it up even further. No, he's got a lot of these.
Yes, and it was
I'm
Banks
saying,
Klutz.
Banks Club. Right. Banks
Klutz.
Okay, for the record, sir, would you please state your name and address?
Thad Rogers with Tiger Tech at NC 135 at 2741.
Okay, and what is it that you'd like the planning board to know about your application?
Well, I mean, to be honest, like I said, Banks was spearheading this part of the business. I'm just filling in for him on his vacation. And I kind of got brought in at the 11th hour on this, but
Lucky you.
I know, right? But what we're looking at is pursuing the options, we've got some additional land and property around the actual physical facility. And the owners were looking at options to utilize that land to help us grow and to, of course, benefit.
Is it for building expansion?
Potentially, I mean, we haven't got a defined path. I think part of what we're looking for right now is to define which direction we can go for, to do our due diligence and see what our own options may be. There's not a defined, we want to do this, we're trying to, Trojan horse something and nothing like that. We're just looking at what are the other available and accepted options that we could look at.
Okay.
And-
We on the board are a little unfamiliar with what the nature of your business is, and I saw your display downstairs, and I still haven't got a clue what you do.
Well, I can summarize that real quick for you.
Okay.
Any major manufacturer in the area, Unify, Gildan, potentially Purina. We used to do work for Miller. Any mechanical moving part within a business, a gearbox, a motor, electric motor, pumps. We do work for the municipalities, City of Eden, Madison, Mayodan, and surrounding counties. Anything that's got a moving part that's mechanical, we pretty much work on it.
So you bring them in and repair, basically?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And especially in this day and age with the supply chain issues, it's been beneficial for us because getting replacement parts, the lead times are so astronomical. And like a lot of the municipalities, budgets, they plan on this like major expenditures, sometimes 1, 2, 3 years in advance. And we just did one. We had to wait a year to get the components to do the work, which back pre-COVID would have been about 3 months. So it's kind of changed the landscape of our business as well as the businesses we support. So, I mean, pretty much any business around here that employs other people that is non-retail, we are the behind-the-scenes people. We're their mechanics.
Oh, okay. We obviously, if you've listened to the conversation, have some concerns about some of the potential uses for the property that would be allowed if we go ahead with the approval. And I believe Ms. Talbert would like you to consider eliminating a few of them.
Yeah, so in here, you have a number of, or the original applicant had a number of uses marked out that I feel like either we're going to open it up to you or we're going to shut it down, one or the other. It's that I think this sort of halfway stuff doesn't make sense to me. So it seems like to me that the things, knowing what I do about that general vicinity, you got farms around, you got people around, you got a church, you got, that kind of thing. So it seems like to me that everything that you're doing there is really industrial. So I'm trying to look at what are those seriously industrial uses, and I'm only coming up with about 8 that I don't think would be very good there or wouldn't be very good for that neighborhood. And of course, adult uses, animal facilities, there's 2 types of kennels. Yeah. Well, I mean, we uncrossing all but those. Did you? Uncrossing? Yeah, so we're uncrossing some of them, if that makes sense. Because they have on here, they've crossed out bulk flammable storage. Well, they're gonna have to, I'm sure that would make sense for that.
It says bulk, though. They'll have flammables, but they're talking in bulk.
Yeah.
Certainly wouldn't pursue that anyway, just because of the
I think they would, you might
licensing
need
and
to
whatnot
at some
that's required to do such a business.
Yeah,
I think, like I said, we're not looking for anything volatile, so to speak. And certainly not, being a negative impact to the area, be it cosmetically or any other indirect ramification. I mean, that's, like I said, I think the purpose of what we're pursuing at this point in time is just to define the scope of what we can look at to pursue with the property.
Mm-hmm.
So when you do this kind of mechanical repair, and this may be out in left field, but you don't bring in big machines and leave them sitting outside and waiting on
No, ma'am.
out where you have an automobile repair shop and there's automobiles sitting out here.
No, ma'am.
You're not going to have big pieces of equipment, big pieces of
No, ma'am.
machinery. Everything is done inside whatever facility that you're working in. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, we don't do like heavy, large machinery. A lot of the components we work on fit inside of one of our vans, and we bring it into our shop, and in a matter of days, it goes back out. Because the longer if it's sitting, we're not making money. And if you've been to the property, behind the property, we have recycle bins, et cetera. It's a pretty, for a machine shop and industrial repair center, it's a very clean facility. Mm-hmm. But no, nothing like that. There's no, aside from our propane tanks, there's no liquid stored outside, nothing like that. Nothing that would be harmful, damaging to the environment. Everything that we use and consume for our business is contained within the physical building, and we don't do any kind of bulk storage of anything of that nature.
Well, having said that, in my mind, Lynn had mentioned, you don't want to be too restrictive, and I understand that part. But I also understand if the property is sold and there's something on here that would be a negative impact to the community. In my mind, this could actually be drilled down more rather than opening it up to the mass. And then if it was sold and somebody had to come back and get a permit for that, that would still be protecting the community and the land around it from something happening that would be not compatible. But that's just my thinking. But I appreciate you explaining what you do, because that makes a difference.
And if you like, I actually had some literature I carry with me at all times, so that kind of gives visual illustrations as to what we do.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Rogers?
Just one for staff.
Okay. Thank you, sir. We'll call you back for rebuttal after the public comment period.
All right, thank you.
I was wondering if there's any calls for or against.
We did have one call from a resident who lives on Saunders Road, who just wanted to know what was happening, that he was familiar with Tiger Tech. His biggest concern was that it was someone other than Tiger Tech coming in to try to set up some sort of operation. I reassured him that it wasn't, and explained the situation about the single use, and that they were seeking just more uses within that category that could result in more development on the parcel. But that was about it. I do believe there is one person signed up to speak otherwise, but that was the only phone call that I took, and I know that Marzi told me he had no phone calls before he left today. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that earlier.
Okay, if there's no other questions for staff, I'm going to open the public comment period. Public comment period is open. Is there Mr. Scott Strader here? Did you want to speak on the Tiger Tech matter?
No, sorry.
I believe he wants to speak on the next case, and also was one of the folks who signed on the wrong sheet, so there may not be anyone else here to speak.
Okay, so there's no one else signed up for It doesn't appear as though there's anyone signed up to speak for or against the case for Tiger Tech. Since that's the case, Mr. Rogers, unless you have additional comments you'd like to make, I'm going to close the public comment period, and you're welcome to give us either more comments. Rebuttal won't be necessary because there's no one to speak against. You good? Okay. Discussion, members? It appears to me that what we're doing is correcting a really unusual way that property was rezoned, or was rezoned 15 years ago. And it seems pretty straightforward. But I'm open to your comments and discussion. And finally, a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I make a motion to recommend approval of this rezoning request to rezone the specific parcel on the rezoning application to the requested zoning district based on the consistency and reasonableness determination statements that are included in the agenda packet submitted during the rezoning presentation, and as may be amended, incorporated into the motion to be included in the minutes, as well as any and all agreed upon conditions also incorporated into the motion. And I don't see any reason to change in any of the conditions.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the application for rezoning in the Tiger Tech case. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, like sign. The vote is 3-2, and the approval is granted by majority. The next case on our agenda is rezoning request 2022-16 for Terramore and Reedsville. Call upon staff to make the presentation.
Thank you, Chairperson Sinowitz. Let me get over here in my slides. This is case 2022-16, submitted by Terramore Development. Oh, I'm one slide short, sorry. The request is a straight rezoning request from neighborhood commercial to, from residential protected to neighborhood commercial. Address is 3756 NC Highway 87, which is exactly at the corner with Freeway Drive, Williamsburg Township. The vicinity map will show you it's just outside of Reedsville city limits and also just outside of their ETJ by a matter of feet in
That's
some
close.
cases. Yeah, it's pretty close. The first zoning map is a close-up that shows the parcel in relation to the others around it. There is a lot of residential protected zoning and residential agricultural zoning. The OI zoning, just to the west, is a place of worship. I believe the industrial zoning across the corner is Smith Carolina. It is at the juncture of Freeway Drive, Cook Florist Road, and NC 87. This is a more zoomed out perspective that shows you there is some heavy industrial to the north, some highway commercial to the north, some light industrial. It's very close to the industrial edge of Reedsville's ETJ. Almost all of those parcels in the Reedsville ETJ are zoned for industrial uses. There's also some other mixed residential uses in the area. As always, there's a lot of residential agricultural nearby, so there's probably some agricultural uses mixed in with residential. This is a somewhat unique situation in that this parcel directly abuts a G1 land class targeted crossroads commercial node. In the G1 land class, there's specific mention of targeting development at the neighborhood commercial level or lower, not at necessarily highway commercial, at these strategic crossroads. And we've come to call them nodes, as you know. So I've enlarged this little purple spot. Of course, the purple spot doesn't carry over onto the parcel, but that was just for emphasis to show you that it's at that node. And as we all know, Terramore generally is involved with the development of Dollar General stores. I don't think that's any secret. There are representatives here who will be able to speak to that. This, however, is at this point, because of the land use plan and because of the zoning matrix in the area, a non-conditional rezoning request. It's located in the G1 land class, as we discussed. These are generally rural, but located near these strategic intersections where neighborhood commercial uses could be appropriate. And economic development goals do support expanding businesses, including small businesses. We've received, I think just today, and the phones have been pretty quiet about this, but just today we received a couple of phone calls. One I received was simply for more information. One was in opposition, but they said they couldn't attend, so I said that I would relay that information. I believe that was it as far as the phone calls go. Again, keep in mind that even though this is a straight rezoning, that the development criteria for non-residential properties will apply. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions for you.
called in opposition? What was their reason?
It wasn't a very specific reason. They just felt like it was, I believe they were a residential property owner nearby, and they were concerned about traffic impacts, always a concern with this sort of thing, and noise potential. But of course, keep in mind, among those development standards, it includes making sure that lighting is directed appropriately, it does not deflect onto nearby properties, 50-foot setbacks, landscape buffers, appropriate means of ingress, egress, site design. There'll be some discussion of that as it moves forward at the technical level, if the rezoning is granted. But yeah, that's it. And I believe there are about 5 people signed up, if I counted right, on that sheet.
Any other questions for staff?
Okay, I'm right over there. I'll back up to the sort of expanded zoning map view, that one.
Thank you, Lynn. Is anyone representing the applicant here? State your name and address for the record.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Ben Hinsey. My address is 400 Belmead Street, Greensboro. I'm a land use attorney from Greensboro. I represent Terramore, the applicant in this matter. Also here tonight representing the applicant, we have Daniel Elmazon from Terramore, and we have Mr. Derek Goddard, who's a civil engineer who works on the site plans for these developments for Terramore. And he can speak to any technical questions that anyone has regarding the site. Mr. Elmazon can speak more broadly about what they plan to put here and address those types of concerns. But wanted to address you. We believe that this is an appropriate use for this site for all the reasons that staff presented. The zoning designation we're seeking is neighborhood commercial, NC. That's intended to be a limited commercial or retail type use intended to serve local residential communities. That's not something that you see built in large commercial districts. That's something that you see in situations like this where there's just 1 or 2 parcels in an otherwise commercial area to serve people that already live there or already drive through that area. In addition to that, it's consistent with the future land use plan, the plan that the Board of Commissioners of this county adopted, sort of deciding how they wanted the county to look 20 years from now. I believe it's a 2040 land use plan. And that plan calls for commercial development, a commercial node at this intersection. So it's been identified as a place where it makes sense to develop commercial uses. So this is exactly what was planned for. This is exactly what was anticipated, and it's exactly what was hoped for by those commissioners when they adopted that plan. As staff pointed out, there are other non-residential uses nearby. There's a large heavy industrial tract essentially directly across the street. There's other heavy industrial just up the road. I think that's about 3/4 of a mile to the corner of the ETJ there. And there's also that church, that institutional use just to the west down the road there. Staff recommends approval, and we think this makes sense as an economically beneficial use of the property that's otherwise not generating significant tax revenue, not providing any neighborhood services, and we think this makes sense. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to, unless anyone has any specific questions for me, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Elmazon to speak a little more about the specific use.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Hinsey?
How close is the next Dollar General from this track?
Mr. Elmazon may know the answer to that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was my question. That was also my question.
Great minds.
This is the man that can answer it.
I'm Daniel Amazon with Terramore Development. The office address is 214 Clumac Road in Salisbury. Thanks for the opportunity to be in front of the board. And I've been in front of this board before regarding a Dollar General.
Yeah.
So to answer the question, I believe the closest one is the Dollar General to the west on the other side of 29. Let me see. I wish I had the chart, but I believe that's 2.5 miles, 3 miles, It's about a 6-mile drive, but as the crow flies, it's closer, and for us, it's kind of like on a different traffic pattern, and actually, this kind of leads into a question that comes up often, because why a Dollar General so close to another one? Obviously, you see that, and especially whenever there's concerns about traffic, the answer is sort of the same. So Dollar General is unlike a Walmart, a bank, auto parts stores, where that you drive out of your way to go there in order to do the product or service that you're looking for. Dollar General, the reason that they have been popular is they place themselves in the path of normal traffic patterns. That's also why DOT doesn't require traffic analysis for us, like TIAs, whenever we go into an area, because they realize that we work off the existing traffic flow, people coming to and from work, school, church, and so those routes aren't extra traffic, they are stops on your way. And so that's why you don't see significant increases in traffic. But that also means that because they rely on traffic patterns, that's why you can have one on the other side of the interstate, essentially, and they service different neighborhoods, different communities, because they don't expect people to go out of their way in order to get those quick items that they run in and out of. This particular store, larger than most of the ones that you've seen, this is a 10,640 square feet. So the additional square footage is for expanded coolers. It's got more of a expanded grocery selection. They've got live fresh fruits and vegetables, and so they've been trying to move it to more of a grocery store concept, sort of like an Aldi's, but still has the normal product line of a Dollar General. And so this one would probably be about a $1.5 million investment, and typically would be about $1.2 million in annual sales. And so with that,
Isn't the closest Dollar General the one located next to Affordable Furniture on Freeway?
Let's see.
Right across the street from Lowe's Foods? Is that not a Dollar General there?
On the northwest, I think the closest one is actually to the west, but that one is the closest drive time. Yeah, and again, on the other side of
That can't be much
29.
more than a mile away.
That's not correct. I tell you what, I can map it, just for the sake of this.
There's one on Way Street, and there's also one on the corner of Misbah Church Road.
There's 7 within a 10-mile radius, so I can.
Okay.
You'll get your turn, ma'am. No outbursts, please.
Okay. But I tell you what, I can definitely measure it and get the answer. Okay. Any other questions?
Doesn't appear to be Mr. Alsman. Thank you.
Wait, actually, I've got, what is it about this piece of property that makes it, we've heard a lot of requests from Dollar General, and what is it about this piece of property that makes it so attractive or for this use?
So, the main thing is that the existing traffic pattern, and that's one of the reasons why it's already identified as a commercial node, because of the traffic pattern there on 87. Likewise, you've got several neighborhoods and that filter through there, and they're close by, and so it's kind of like you've got the population that supports it, and you've got the traffic supports it.
All right, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much.
We're good.
Planning Board, my name is Derek Goddard at Blue Ridge Environmental Consultants. We're located at 1520 Meadowview Drive, Wilkesboro. We're the civil engineering firm that works with Terramore Development in these developments and rezoning cases. And so I want to be brief in my comments and make myself available to questions for you. But we certainly deal with the technical aspects of the site. This particular site, it's about a 3.72 acre site. We're proposing in our site plan, I know you're not privy to this information, but we're going to share it with you tonight, 43 parking spaces We have a planned and on-site wastewater system, on-site septic system. These Dollar Generals have really, 2 bathrooms basically, or 2 toilets, sometimes 1 toilet, and they have a very small septic system on site. We'll have an on-site well, and probably one of the most important things is we're going to retain all of our stormwater on site and filter that out. So we'll have both stormwater treatment for runoff from water quality standpoint, but we'll attenuate storm flows too during heavy rainfall events. One of the things we've done on the site to be cognizant of traffic is work very closely with DOT, and we'll have entrances both on Freeway Drive and on NC 87. Those entrance drives are moved as far away from the intersection as we can on the parcel, and that provides a factor of safety there, so we don't have a lot of conflicts with turns. So we've modeled all our turns for any kind of truck traffic, which is certainly very limited going into this site, and trucks work through our site as well. The building is set back from the corner. It's a setback of 50 feet. We've planned for extensive landscaping, and all these things are part of your commercial development ordinance, building ordinance, that we'll have to meet those standards and work with your staff to do such. But again, we'll have extensive landscaping there as well. So be glad to answer any questions about the site design and what we were planning to do there. I mean, certainly Dollar General will have site lighting that's dark sky compliant, meaning that we don't have light trespass on adjacent properties, and so that's something we do often. So any questions for me?
I have a question. You all usually, when you present these things, you'll give us a rendering of what the site's going to look like. And we've seen them, so we're not, we can get a mind's eye view. What is this thing going to look like?
So traditionally, we've come to, I think in cases before, we've had conditional rezonings where there's been an opportunity to talk to you about the site plan. I do not have a rendering with me tonight. I'll ask Mr. Almazan, does he have an idea of what the facility will look like, and he can speak to that more directly. The building.
Yeah, you've got there was a couple of versions. One looked more like a home kind of, and then one was just straight out a commercial building.
Box.
Yeah, box. If you have any idea of what it's going to look like.
Yeah, we'll get Mr. Almazan back up. He can address those questions about the look of the building.
And the parking spaces, are they all going to be up front or?
So the parking spaces will be, the building will be oriented long ways. It's a rectangular building, will be oriented long ways with NC 87, if you can envision that. So there'll be about 7 parking spaces that are on the Freeway Drive side, and the remainder of parking spaces will be on the NC 87 side.
So there'll be side parking and front parking as well?
That's right, but very limited front parking on the front Freeway Drive. And
Okay.
again, it'd be 50 feet from more than 50 feet from the Freeway Drive.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Goddard?
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Just to confirm this, and actually, I was trying to think, you have does the projector work here?
It does. It's been a while.
All right, let's see what we got.
We got it.
Okay.
There we go.
Looks like it is. I don't know if, are we able to? All right, so you have to do that?
You might be able to.
Okay.
Hang on, let me see if I can.
All right, I was going to say, I figure that way you can see it rather than me pass around the phone.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know, is that,
Drop the light.
yeah, let's, there we go. Okay. That's,
Oh, Lynn, that's too dark.
Okay, so these are the two closest ones, and so I just want to make sure that I address which one that you were referring. So this one, as the crow flies, is closest, but in drive miles is 3.5 miles. Whoops. See if I can- All right. I don't know if that helps. That probably doesn't help a whole lot.
So now we got his password.
Is this the one that you were referring to? This one's 2.5 mile drive time.
Didn't seem like it was,
Drive time, but drive distance. So this one's 3.5 miles drive distance. That one's 2.5 miles drive distance.
And the bottom one's
There's
Miss
also
Church.
one at Yanceville Road,
The one farther north.
a little bit further. There's three within,
There's another one.
Again,
There's Yanceyville Road.
different traffic pattern. And I know it's kind of like, there's a lot of them, but it's the same reason why gas stations, you see a lot of gas stations on different corners, because they're trying to target the traffic patterns for those areas.
Can you click on that photo? Is that the rendering of it?
Oh, this just happened, this is Google Maps, and
Will be a picture of an open field.
Oh, okay. So you don't have a rendering of the,
no, they don't have one at
Okay.
this time.
we generated one on this one because it was a straight rezoning. Typically, we'll do that whenever it's a conditional use because that's part of the conditions that we place.
Right.
Obviously, we'll meet the county guidelines, but this one would be probably it's a masonry base, metal facade, so it's more of a prototypical.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a box with,
If that's what you call a box, yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a box.
well, you had one
Yeah.
that looked kind of like a house because it had an entrance, and then you've got one that looks like a box, so I got them.
Julie, are you thinking about the one on 158? Across from Bethany?
135. It's on-
135.
There's one on 135 that's a box, that's got the brick around the front of it.
Okay. Yeah.
With this size, it's similar to that one on 135, and it's also similar to.
Got it. So, so that's going to be, well, for reference, there's one on 135. Is it the same, is it about the same square footage?
It's, I'm trying to think if that's the new on 135.
it is new.
Within the last 2 to 3 years.
Well, yeah.
I'm not positive.
Well, that's
Not
fine.
positive.
That's fine. That's good.
All right.
I have a
Okay.
view of what it looks like.
But any other questions? Thank you.
All right, the following is some general information for you folks before I open the public comment period. Zoning map changes reviewed by the planning board are legislative matters. These map changes are reviewed for reasonableness and consistency with North Carolina General Statute 160D, the county's 2021 Land Use Plan, and Unified Development Ordinance, among other adopted plans. When making a decision, we consider the recommendations of planning staff and public comments. When applicable, this board reviews potential land uses requested by the applicant. Planning board decisions are forwarded to the Board of Commissioners as recommendations. The Board of Commissioners will hold another public meeting before making a final decision whether to approve or deny a zoning map change recommended by this board. You should also know that the commissioners will provide an additional public comment period. So this is not your only opportunity to speak for or against this matter. When this matter comes before the commissioners, there'll be another public comment period that they will provide. A zoning map change is the first in a series of reviews and approval that move a project forward. The Technical Review Committee, known as the TRC, reviews the site plans and technical items related but not limited to later development approvals, including transportation concern, environmental issues, and county service. In other words, all the infrastructure items are addressed by the TRC. The TRC is comprised of professional staff and other agency members, such as the North Carolina Department of Transportation, county schools, emergency services, and the North Carolina Division of Environmental Quality. With that, I'm going to open the public comment period. Now, we've got two lists, so I'm not sure who signed up first, but I'll go with the bigger list first and ask Ernest Lynn. And for the record, would you please state your name and address?
My name is Ernest Lynn. I live at 3730 North Carolina Highway 87. I've been there 53 years. My property joins the 3756 property. Currently, within a 5 to 10 minute drive from the proposed area we're talking about, there are 6 dollar stores, either Dollar General or Family Dollar. You know, I really cannot see a need for another discount store like that in the area. The current area, as you know, is zone residential protected. I think that not only I, a lot of the residents of the area would like to see it stay that way. Most of these stores do not add value to the community. In fact, it's my opinion and opinion of others that they distract from it. They give the appearance of a financially challenged community, and when you get so many of them in an area, it looks like a financially challenged community or county. I am concerned about my privacy. They're concerned about traffic and safety there. That is a busy intersection. I'm concerned about watershed, for one. Ever since Freeway Drive was expanded there at the intersection along with 87, there's a lot of runoff of water when there's a lot of rainy time going on. And I know that it's been addressed by engineers and so on and built into the current design, but still presents a problem, especially in the back of my area. These buildings, really what they appear to be, are metal warehouse buildings with somewhat cheap-looking front on them. And I don't mean to be so negative, but I just have to be very truthful in how I feel and how I see them. Again, I've been there 53 years. I would like to see the area stay as it is, and I just feel like that this would be a step down for the community to put a Dollar General in that area. And I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Well, that concludes your time, sir. Thank you very much.
I'm going to fix the map right now.
Yeah, could we have that map back up, please? We've got the speakers on timer, so no questions. Our next speaker signed up is Terry Clark.
Hello, I'm Terry Clark. I live at 3686 NC Highway 87. I have been there for 22 years. My husband's parents bought that land and built a home there back in the 60s. And my concern is, what is it going to do to make our neighborhood better? I have that concern. It's residential protected, and that's why we're there, because it's protected for residential. It's agriculture around there. I have a concern over the safety of people going in and out of store there. It's 4 lanes coming in from Freeway, and it's 4 lanes coming up 87. So that's all I have to say, and just praying for the right judgment to be made. Do you call? Have any questions for me?
No, ma'am.
All right.
Thank you. Scott Strader. We finally got you, Scott. Called you twice, but now you're out.
My name's Scott Strader. I live right around the corner from the new, in Reedsville, North Carolina, on Cook Flores Road. And if you, I was hoping the map would be pulled up here because I want to kind of show where my property is, and I actually do soybeans and
Lynn, can we get the map back?
We can. I do just want to clarify.
Oh, there it is.
We can go back and forth between the map, but when we're displaying the timer, we can't display the map.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I won't be
The
long,
issue
I
was-
promise.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's fine.
Oh, you got it right here. Look at
Is
there.
this the closest one? Does that work?
Yeah, mine, but no, kind of pan up a little bit, just right there. My property's right there. It's right, just to the right of your area, up to your left. Come down a little bit, sorry. See the big area, it says RA in the middle of it, down a little bit more, right there.
Now?
Yep.
It appears that Mr. Strader's parcel is down Cook Forest Road. The first largest area, size area parcel that's zoned RA is his. Does that stand out for you?
Does everybody see that?
The one that goes all the way to 29.
Yeah, if you.
No.
Forest runs behind 87, between 87 and 29.
It's that one right
It's the
there.
small road
That,
to the rear of the subject.
Almost on the corner where they're proposing the,
Got it.
we got you.
Got it.
South of the church,
Yeah.
the largest parcel
Okay.
that you see.
left, going away from the, on the same side of the road as the Dollar General on Cook Flores Road.
All right, we see that. We're going to put you back on a 3-minute timer
Okay.
here. Okay.
Thank you. My general concern is, I actually have some soybeans there that I have a guy that leases and grows beans and different things for me. We already have a storm drain problem there already because it busted my pond on the backside of my property when we had a lot of rain in that area, and it's already terrible the way the water drains down through there. It busted my whole dam of my pond. The next thing that I have is obviously the traffic there in that area. And there's a lot of farm areas in that area also that grow beans in that area. And my question to you guys are, there's a lot of commercial property that is owned by Rockingham County and the city of Reedsville together there on Diesel Drive, not even a mile away, where they built the new Loves and they built the new ABC store and 5 other gas stations that are in that area. Why can't we use that area? Well, I mean, can we not kind of sell that kind of property there for it's already commercial? Just kind of curious on that's a high-end area there, a lot of traffic up there on the side of 29. Just kind of curious on that. I'm just concerned for my kids. I have younger kids here too. I'm all for growth. I like the growth. I understand that, and I'm a business owner in the city of Reedsville, and I like to see things for kids. I like to see jobs, but I just don't understand the meaning of a Dollar General. If you come down Cook Flores Road and you turn right on Missouri Church Road, that's where this other Dollar General is located. And I could be there in just a little over 2 miles. It's not that far from my house on Cook Flores Road. So I just don't understand why we have so many Dollar Generals in that area. And that's my concern. One, the storm drainage is already a problem, and my water. That's my next thing. I mean, this ain't city water. This is well water. So when they dig this huge well for this business here, what's that going to do to my well? What's that going to do to my property? You know, that's my concern. And I thank you guys for listening to me.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions for me?
No,
All right,
Scott.
thank you.
Shannon Franklin.
I'm Shannon Franklin from 260 Lindsay Road. I am less than a mile from the proposed new structure of Dollar General. I am eager and excited that Dollar General is interested in building yet another one in Rockingham County. However, I do have some concerns. I know that there were some questions about the closest Dollar General, and I have jotted down the various Dollar Generals that are within a 8-mile range from the new proposed location. And I know you guys are aware of them, but just to jog your memory, there is one that is 5.4 miles that's located on Freeway Drive. There is one that is 4.7 miles that's located on US 29 across from Lowe's. There is a new one, which I love the look of, on Mizpah Church Road. And like you guys had mentioned, it looks like a house, unlike the one that's being proposed that's going to look like a box that was stated. Thinking about the new build on Mizpah Church Road, it is a much smaller Dollar General. It has a great residential look. It does not serve or does not sell alcohol. To my understanding, with this new building, you had mentioned that there will be a increase in size and much larger coolers, which will lead way for alcohol sales, which proposes a safety issue. I am a native of Rockingham County, moved to Guilford County, and just moved back to Rockingham County within the last year to come back home to this location. It is disheartening to think that my children their safety will be put in jeopardy because of this new establishment and alcohol sales on top of the new ABC store that's just been put down the road, the motels that are down the road. So that's my biggest concern. There's also a Dollar General that's 3.5 miles, which he mentioned, and that's on Way Street across from Food Lion. There is one that's near Yanceyville Road, and that's 5.9 miles. And there's also one at the other end of 87, which is 7.1 miles from the new location or the proposed location. I just hope that it is considered that while I do hope Rockingham County gets yet another Dollar General, because I frequent Dollar General, I just don't feel like this is going to be the best location, number one, for traffic, and number two, for safety, due to the clientele it's going to bring with the increased alcohol sales that I'm sure will take place. Are there any questions for me?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer Carter, you agree with what everyone else has said, essentially? Did we call Thad Rogers?
Thad may have signed the wrong sheet. He was the speaker for Tiger Tech. He was the representative for Tiger Tech.
That's right. Well, that appears to be the sum of the speakers. Did we miss anyone?
Mr. Chair, I believe there's one person here who arrived late who would like to speak who didn't have a chance to sign in.
Okay. Who is that person, and would you please come forward?
I'm sorry, he's signaling to me that he's now declined to speak. Your concerns have been addressed, I assume? Okay.
Okay, then we're going to close the public comment period. Public comment period is now closed. Gentlemen from Terramore, you have each 3 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you, members of the board. I'll be brief. I want to make a few specific points about some of the concerns that were raised and also sort of a general point about the nature of this rezoning request. With respect to the concerns about water runoff and drainage, that's always a concern anytime you build a commercial site anywhere. We certainly understand that. The county has existing ordinances in place and the state has existing requirements in place. Just as a matter of law, we cannot make runoff worse. Mr. Goddard will speak to that momentarily about the site plan, but any commercial development like this will have to have a water retention area so that our stormwater runoff from our site doesn't add to the runoff of other adjoining sites. So that is a perfectly appropriate concern. I understand the concern, but it is something that the county is very aware of, all municipalities are aware of, and it's baked into the ordinances to mitigate that before it happens. Likewise, in terms of water usage, you heard the mention that a Dollar General store typically has 1, maybe 2 bathrooms. It's a very small user of water. There's not a lot of water running. We're not going to draw a lot of water out of the local supply. And then also in terms of traffic, you heard this mentioned, and you'll probably hear it mentioned again. Dollar Generals are not destinations. They are conveniences on your way from somewhere to somewhere else. Nobody goes out of their way to go to a Dollar General. That's the reason there are so many of them, and that's the reason that this is an attractive site. The folks that live near here, whether they're ultimately happy about it being built or not, are likely to stop in there for conveniences on their way to or from work, when they're at home and they realize they forgot something during their main grocery shop for the week. And likewise, people that drive up and down Highway 87 on their way to work are likely to pop in on their commute. It's not new traffic, it's folks that are already driving that way. In addition to that, I wanted to speak a little bit to the nature of this rezoning request. This is a straight rezoning request from residential protected to neighborhood commercial. As we mentioned in the opening, the long-term land use plan calls for this intersection specifically to be developed as a commercial node. We've talked a lot about the specific use we're talking about here, which is a Dollar General, but we're not asking for this to be rezoned as a Dollar General site. We're asking this to be rezoned as a commercial site in a future designated commercial node. It's not the place of governments to pick business winners and losers. I know everybody would like to see exciting new independent general store open in sites like this, but the economic realities mean that general stores are typically things like Dollar General, and that's an appropriate use here. And again, I just would like to note that we're asking for a specific zoning district, not a specific use, and I would like to make sure everybody considers that, and I thank you for your time.
I'll take a couple minutes to just provide some feedback on some of the concerns and questions there. When we work to develop these locations, one of the first things we do is pull the land use plan out. What is the future land use plan for communities? And so, as it's been talked about here by staff and by our speakers, this is a commercial node in which, that guided us to this site. I mean, there's certainly other sites we could have looked at, but when we look at the land use plan and we see that the county commissioners and county staff have said this is the site, we want commercial development, then that's what we gravitate to. And so we do our best to try to meet those goals in the communities we work in. Specifically speaking, there were some concerns about traffic that were brought up here. Of course, as you all know, NCDOT has the authority and say on traffic, and so we worked again closely with DOT to make this site safe. As we've already talked about, it's certainly not a destination location. It's a to and from, so we're catching existing traffic that's going to by the site. Questions about stormwater. Again, we've told you that we're having we have a pond on site that'll catch stormwater, not only catch flood flows, but also treat that flood flow for water quality purposes, and now there's nothing on that site at all, so the water just runs right off. So we're going a step beyond to catch that water and provide that attenuation on our site. And then finally, there was the question about wells, and so I just want to give you this analogy. Dollar General uses less water than a 2-bedroom house, so it's a small user of water. The well here will be a traditional well like anybody'd have at their house, drinking water well. So it's a pretty low impact use there for water. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, the only thing that I was going to add is that just kind of summarizing the 2040 plan was a long-term plan looking at this as a commercial node. It was NB was an appropriate use, and obviously a retail store, a grocery store, a general hardware store is an appropriate use and something that would service the immediate community. Now, in this case, that's what we're proposing, and we hope that you support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we begin our discussion, I want to remind the board members that all of the infrastructure issues raised by those against this project are issues that are addressed by the TRC in great detail. And I'm a member of the TRC, so I can assure you that the detail is exhaustive. Also, other than infrastructure issues, I did not see saturation of this type of business as a compelling reason to deny it based on the fact that it's in one of the nodes that the land use plan encourages for development. That concludes my comments, and now I'll open it up for discussion amongst the members.
Mr. Chair, as we've looked at a lot of these in the last few years, and the themes from the people that are opposed are the same. And but in looking at this particular piece of property, it's sitting in a node. There is a automotive machine shop within, it looks like, sight of it. There's a heavy industrial within sight. And knowing what we do about how these things, what happens if we deny it, knowing what we do about how those have gone, we've denied some, but we've also approved some as if it seemed more appropriate. And I got to be honest with you, I can't see this is the most appropriate spot to put one of these, I believe, we've ever seen, because it's sitting in a node and because of what's around it. And I understand that people are, you're living in proximity to it, and that's not, that might not be what you want. But I can also anticipate what would happen on the backside of this if we denied it. I just, there's just a lot going on right there. I don't see much against it. Just from a practical standpoint of having had this experience before, but I certainly do understand what folks, what they understand. I live within myself live within less than a quarter mile of a Dollar General, so there. And that's the business model to build out over time.
I'd like to address what the notion of a node is. I live near a identified node. I live out in as country as you can get. The likelihood of that one being developed is slim to none. It's just an intersection, just an intersection in a road. Just because something's identified as a node, don't give it a clear purpose as being a site for a certain business or anything else. I know that's proposed interest of an area, and it's an area of interest, but just because something's a node, I mean, you got a given right for something to locate there. I just want to point that out because, like I said, just because something is a node or identified node, it may not be suitable to be something like this built on. The one that I live near is just a hill and a hollow, and it's not a candidate. It's just identified as a node, but part of the problem I think we're running into is locating something in between neighborhoods or in a neighborhood where there has not been anything like this. And I think, there's something coming in and taking place of something that's already there that is not desirable in the neighborhood's eyes. I think that's where a lot of this comes from. I know this is an intersection. I know it's probably a good place for one. But I think that remains part of the problem. Some of the other areas where these have went, like out near Bethany School, that was a great site. There's no houses right near it. But this one has a lot of houses near it. The one on 704 had a lot of houses near it. And I think that's part of the problem what we're running into. So, I mean, my suggestion is maybe in the future, look at places that maybe necessarily don't have as many houses bunched into it. Then you might not have quite so many, negative comments or feelings toward it. But I agree with Julie. It is probably a good site.
Well, and two.
There is a lot of other industry around it, I understand. There is.
We have made the point before that as Dollar General builds out in this county, if we deny it, they're just going to find another place because they have the wherewithal to do that. So, I mean, that point has been made. So we can actually make really
And
good arguments on both sides.
There's nothing against Dollar
Yeah,
General.
yeah.
I shop at them myself. It's just you're moving in and becoming a neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
You're not necessarily a wanted neighbor because you're in a neighborhood. That's what I'm trying to get at. But you're becoming a neighbor. These people have to live with what's built there. They have to live there. They have to live beside it. And, it becomes part of the neighborhood for good or bad. I mean, that's what you're looking at. And that's probably, like I said, the reason that some of these feelings are felt, some of the reasons that what they're expressing here. When you move into something that's where there's already a lot of houses, that's what you're going to have. That's just something I wanted to say. That's how I feel about it.
Chairman?
Yes, Cindy.
I agree that just because the 2040 plan says this should be a commercial spot, as a commercial node, but like the former board member said, sometimes just because it's zoned that way or looks like it should be that way, if there weren't any other Dollar Generals within a long distance and this community needed a Dollar General, but they've got 4 within a 5-mile radius. And yes, there'll be something else come if this doesn't pan out. There'll be something else to come to this area, but it still has to come in front of the planning. It still has to go through the entire process. And we could deny it here, and the commissioners could approve it at their end. But a lot of the concerns that you've addressed, Dollar General does take care of it. They have to follow the guidelines. They have to go through the technical review committee. So they have to play by the rules. And I don't think that their facilities are unattractive per se. They do have different styles that go in different areas, but just because, I can't support this just because the 2040 plan says this is a node. There will be something built there, and there could be something even less desirable built there that would pass. And if there weren't as many around it as there are, I would certainly support it, but for that reason, I can't.
Mr. Chair.
James.
Just like to point out, if you're business-minded at all, which Terra Moore and the applicants are, that you look at this intersection, it's 4 lanes going in 2 different directions, and you've got housing all around you. It's a great place to put it. You couldn't find a better spot for a location. That on its own merits, to me, speaks volumes. Plus the fact that the applicant, it's his property. If that's what he wants to do with it, then he has every right to make that decision. I just think that looking at this map and seeing all the growth around this area, that from a business standpoint, it's a great decision.
Any further discussion? In that case, is there a motion? No, sir. The public comment period's closed. Motion, anyone?
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion to recommend approval for this rezoning request to rezone the specific parcel on the rezoning application to the requested zoning district based on the consistency and reasonableness determination statements that are included in the board agenda packet submitted during the rezoning presentation, and as may be amended, incorporated into the motion to be included in the minutes.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the application for case number 2022- is it 15? 15. All those in favor, please.
I'm sorry, 16.
16. I stand corrected. All those in favor, please signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, like sign. The vote's 4-1. The motion is approved as a recommendation to the county commissioners. And again, I want to remind you folks out there that when the commissioners hear this, there'll be another opportunity and public comment period would be provided for them. So if you want to continue to object, their meeting will be held on.
Barring any scheduling adjustments that come from the commissioners should hear the final decision on this on August the 15th. And another round of postcard notifications will go out before that hearing of August.
Meeting's usually advertised in the paper.
Yes, it'll also be advertised in this room, same room.
Where's my agenda? There doesn't appear to be any new business, gentlemen. There doesn't appear to be any new business listed on the agenda, and
The old business is just an update. It's just, you guys had wanted information about how things are going at the Board of Commissioners. Nothing was actually heard of the commissioners in the month of June. There were different postponements and reschedules of different hearings, so nothing's happened since the last planning board at this point.
okay. All right, motion to adjourn, anyone? Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor? Meeting is adjourned.
One vote is always unanimous.